Hello, everyone. Those who've made it out tonight and those who will tune in either here on Facebook Live or when it eventually makes it. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We are continuing our study in the book of Job, and we are on chapter 20. This chapter is Zophar, and he is going to give his advice to Job. Zophar was the worst of the three, and this is his last opportunity to speak. He only gets 2 shots at it. The other 2 guys get 3. So, but this is Zophar. What?
So you've heard this will be now all of them have spoken twice after this chapter.
Yes,
so
and then the other two will each get another shot at it, and or maybe more accurately say shot at Job, because none of them are very pleasant. But this is Zophar's last opportunity to speak. Before we dive in, we always like to invite folks, if you're in Western New York and you're available, come on out and join us on a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. Or if you don't have a home church, we invite you to join us at River Life Chapel in Youngstown, New York at 3474 Creek Road, Sunday mornings at 10:30. If you've already got a church where the Lord's led you, be there, be a blessing, don't be a pain in the neck. Well, you know, I often ask, sidetracked already, we're not even into Job. I often ask, consider if someone were to privately ask your pastor or spiritual leaders, what do you think of when your name is mentioned? What would your pastor say? Oh, what a blessing, or oh man, pain in the neck. Now hopefully no pastor's ever going to tell you that, but it's something to think about. Am I a blessing, or am I someone that they would rather not see? Don't ask me. I don't know how we got here from Job. We haven't even started the chapter, but I will say this: Zophar is a pain in the neck. So, alrighty, off and running. Okay, so Zophar. I'll read the introductory 3 verses, and we'll talk about that, and then let somebody else read the next section. The first 3 verses are basically Zophar's turmoil, and it says, Job chapter 20 is where we're at. And then answered Zophar the Naamathite and said, therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer, and for this sake I make haste. I have heard the check of my reproach, and the spirit of my understanding causeth me to answer. So, Zophar's comments, or Job's comments, have upset Zophar. Does anybody feel sorry for him? No, wouldn't think so. But the onset of this chapter, Zophar's comments, the first 3 verses, indicate that Job's speech upset Zophar. And what's it say in verse 2? I think it must be another translation. Do any of the translations say anxious thoughts? Yours, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so in chapter 2, therefore do my anxious thoughts cause me to answer. Okay, he's expressing what he thinks is his righteous indignation. Job, your speech has ticked me off, so I have to answer. That's the Bob paraphrase. Now you folks know why I've never translated scripture. My paraphrases are a little loose. So he's expressing what he thinks is his righteous indignation at how Job has abused and reproached him, Zophar, and the others. Really? So Job's reply is based on what he assumes is, or Zophar's reply is based on what he is saying Job has abused him with. So basically, in spite of your reproach, so Zophar is saying essentially this, and some of this comes out of looking up some of the words and that, in spite of your reproach, I will answer calmly with my spirit of understanding and wisdom. And so that's more or less, I have heard the check of my reproach, is verse 3, and the spirit of my understanding causes me to answer. Job, you got no understanding. My spiritual understanding, my spiritual wisdom, I'm going to...
Yeah, earlier Job said, even the animals know what you're saying. Yeah, referring to an earlier chapter that we studied where... I do understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so Zophar is going to lay it out for him. And then in verse 3 it says, my understanding. Does because some of these probably come from, did anybody's translation use the word haste? No?
In verse 3.
Verse 2 or 3?
Prompt in verse 2.
Prompt. Okay. Therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer. Okay. Oh, make haste. There it is right there, King James. I was looking for it. I missed it.
Mine says, therefore my disquieting thoughts make me answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so anxious, disquieting thoughts. And then because of that, I make haste. So Zophar is probably addressing Job's haste in contrast to his. Job's thoughts versus Zophar's understanding in Job 20, verse 2, which is where is it? Yeah, in Job, verse 2. So he says, therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer, and for this I make haste. I have heard in verse 3, so basically he's comparing Job's thinking with his understanding. And then, so he's in verse 3, he says, the spirit of my understanding. So he's kind of, Job, we got enough of your thinking, your thoughts. Now listen to my spirit of understanding, is kind of where he's going with that.
It also seems that, this Zophar guy, he's feeling troubled.
Yeah.
He's feeling anxious.
Yeah.
Has disquieting thoughts. Poor guy. Let's talk about all Zophar's problems.
Yeah.
So he's completely flipped the whole purpose of them going to Job. It was to minister to him, but now it's like, look I'm all upset too.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah, Job's refusal to embrace their accusations has for sure ticked Zophar off. We don't know about the other guys, that their responses are pretty brutal too. But so far they haven't mentioned, gee, Job, you've made me mad, whereas Zophar is saying that right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're done talking about me now? Okay, I guess so.
Yeah. So, like I said, is anybody really upset that Zophar is mad? I wouldn't think so.
Especially in understanding about the book of Job, and I take it kind of in the context that the whole experience that Job is going through has been planned by Satan, and now he's using every method to make Job curse God and die, and he's also using these acquaintances of his, but for us, how we apply it is the mouthpiece of Satan. He is continually doing the very same thing in our own lives, and so it's and Satan will even use this context of as if poor Satan, as if poor him, he's being misunderstood and everything.
Yeah.
Like he'll twist us in such way, and we just got to realize, no, he's a liar, and we just do not receive all his manipulation.
Yeah. And that's why we got to take everything back to the Word of God.
Yeah.
Because the Bereans, they searched the Scriptures daily, and they were testing the Apostle Paul. So I guess we probably should test everyone else. So, yeah. All right, so the next section, Job 20, verses 4 through 11, I call it the short-lived victory of the wicked man. So let's see, 4 through 11. If somebody wants to read, say, 4 through 7, and then somebody else 8 through 11.
I can do 4 through 7.
All right.
Do you not know this from the old days, since the time that man was placed on the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the godless is only for a moment? Though his pride reaches the heavens and his head touches the clouds, yet he perishes forever like his own refuse. Those who have seen him will say, where is he? And that was
Then 8 through 11. Okay.
He will fly away like a dream and not be found. Yes, he will be chased away like a vision of the night. The eye that saw him will see him no more, nor will his place behold him any more. His children will seek the favor of the poor, and his hands will restore his wealth. His bones are full of his youthful vigor, but it will lie down with him in the dust.
All right, so basically, Zophar in these passages is basically saying the victory of the wicked is short-lived. So we'll start with verse 4. First, he appeals back to age-old wisdom. Zophar appeals to age-old wisdom, the idea being, we all know this to be true. And then he says, any victories of the wicked is fleeting and passes quickly, like your previous estate, Job. That's not specifically stated, but implied. So, know you not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth. So, verse 4, he's appealing to that age-old wisdom, and basically saying, Job, we all know this, which Job, like Ethan brought up, Job previously said, even the animals know what you're saying. Tell me something I don't know. Well, now Zophar is basically echoing that. Come on, Job, we all know this is true. But in the end, he finds out what he did think he knew, God says it wasn't true. And so part of the, again, just to restate, part of the problem with what these guys, and this is something we can learn when we're giving counsel to someone, is the problem in part lies with thinking that we know it all. So these guys, Zophar and the other two, think that their advice is complete and whole, whereas occasionally it's partially right, but the idea that it's completely right makes it wrong. That would be like reading Proverbs and taking each proverb as if it's a promise. Well, a proverb is not a promise. A proverb is something that is generally right. Like the one proverb, the dog returns to its vomit. Well, not every dog returns to its vomit. Generally, that's the truth, So you got to read Scripture in context, and a proverb is a proverb, not a promise. Well, the same thing here is if you're stating something that's true, like, okay, it's partially true. If you punch someone, they're probably going to try and defend themselves and punch back. Not everyone. Some are going to run away. Some are going to cry. Some are going to, not defend themselves, but just, don't do it again, So it's normally true. But if I say that's an absolute truth, I'm wrong. And that's what these guys are doing. They're proclaiming what could be partial truths, and if they're true at all, and making the claim as if it's absolute truth. And that's what Zophar is saying here. Come on, Job, this is age-old wisdom that's been known since the earth started. How can you be arguing against it? And then in verse 5, he says that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. Okay, so basically he's saying the victories of the wicked, like you, Job, is short-lived. Now we don't know how old Job was when all this happened. I think, if I can find it real quick, I think he lived like 140 years after it was all done. Latter end of Job, more. I think it was like 120, 140. It's in the last chapter, and I'm missing it right now. Anyway, so, oh well. Anyhow, he lived, suffice it to say, Job lived a fairly long time after all these events took place. I think it was 120, 140 years. I can't recall right off the top of my head. It's not that important. It's in Job, yeah. It's not that important for the point I'm trying to make, which, did I lose it? What the point was? No, yeah, no. So we don't know how old Job was when all this took place, but he was married and had 10 kids. So if you space that out 2 years between each kid, that's 20 years. 20 years right there giving birth, and say he was 20 years when he got married. So he's 40 years old, at least, roughly speaking.
Were you looking for the second last verse? After this, Job lived 140 years.
So what's the after this? Is that after he had 10 more kids?
It talks about the daughters and
Yeah.
sons.
So apparently, he after he was restored, after he was given double the amount of wealth, after he got 10 kids, then the second to last verse says he lived another 140 years, right? Is what it said. So I've read that he could have lived like 200 years more after all of this. So
42:16.
yeah, well, there you go. So
Job 42:16.
yeah, yep. So anyhow, suffice it to say that Job's short-lived victory is a matter of opinion. I mean, Job probably was 40, 50 years old at least, just doing the math. And Zophar is saying, well, the victory of the wicked is, like it doesn't last. Well, thanks for your opinion, Zophar. Anyhow, so that point there was what I was trying to get at, is that it's partial truth. I mean, the victory of the wicked, I mean, if you look throughout history, some wicked people lasted a whole long time,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Methuselah, for one.
well, he wasn't one of the wicked ones, though.
I meant age-wise.
Yeah, age-wise, yeah. But
Oldest.
but some of the wicked people lasted a long time. Some of the good ones didn't last very long, So it's a generality that he's saying is absolutely true, and that's one of the problems with these guys. Verse 6. Though his excellency, speaking of the wicked, mount up to the heavens, and his head reach into the clouds. Verse 7, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, where is he? So in this case, couple of thoughts on that first verse. Though his excellency mount up. So one aspect of that, when I was looking at it, is lofty in pride. The other aspect that could be is referring to the excellency of Job's previous estate. So his wealth that surpassed everyone else. So that excellency could be speaking towards pride. It could be speaking, well, no matter how excellent you used to be, Job, what's going to happen is you will perish. You shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, where is he? So basically, in line with the previous verses, is no matter how victorious you were, you wicked man, you're going to die like everyone else and be forgotten forever. So,
And he has to be that descriptive,
yeah.
using the word dung. It's like man, yeah, he's throwing stuff at him.
Oh yeah. He's throwing everything at him. I mean.
Also, another thing I noticed there is that one of the things that he could be saying wrong is that he's kind of giving too much credit to the wicked. He's saying that they're either their arrogance or their wealth and whatnot reaches to the heavens and all that. He's giving the wicked too much credit.
Yeah.
Even though they might have a lot of wealth and are extremely arrogant, they are in fact not in the heavens.
Yeah, and here's another modern saying that comes out of the King James. I'm not sure how it reads in the other translations. Verse 6, head reached into the clouds, talking about having your head in the clouds. So, folks, that just jumped out, but it's another modern thing that people say they don't even know comes from the Bible. So yeah, no matter how excellent your former life might have been, the wicked shall experience perish like dung. Zophar is contradicting Job's belief in a bodily resurrection, which we saw in the previous chapter. Dung, a strong term expressing disgust and the lowest degradation.
One thing is, at least in my translation, it seems like this guy at least believes in some sort of eternal punishment of some sort for the wicked, because it says he perishes forever like his refuse. That's what mine says in chapter 7.
Yeah.
It has the word forever there.
Yeah, no, mine says forever too, but that perish, I'd have to look it up, but it could just mean cease to exist. You're forever ceasing to exist. It doesn't mandate that, I'm sure, because I've looked that word up before. Not just for this study.
Because mine uses the word perishes, the act of
Yeah,
perishing.
it could be. I be surprised if he had that much insight, but it could be. So, and then I've got lowest degradation, so dung, disgust and lowest degradation, and be forgotten forever. Like people who knew him was like going to say, who's that? Where is he? What are you talking about? Forgotten forever, which is an important thing. It's important in our culture today, but it was definitely important, very important in those times, having, children, especially sons, to carry on the family name, the lineage. I mean, that's where, anyone with the name Ben is son of something. Mm-hmm. So Benjamin was son of, I know who he is, but what it means.
Son of my righteous, no.
Son of something, but then his mother wanted him named Ben.
Of my sorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but Ben, anyone in the Old Testament named Ben is son of something. Yeah. And in the New Testament, it's, Bar, like Simon Bar Jonah, that kind of thing. So carrying on the family name. So this is a real serious, strong reference. But I found it interesting to compare, this, you're going to die and be forever like dung. And then in Philippians 3:8, yea, doubtless I count all things but loss for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I suffered the loss of all things, and do count them but dung, that I may win Jesus Christ. So,
what is that reference?
Philippians 3:8. So I contrast the two. I mean, Zophar is using dung as, Job, you're going to die. You're never going to be remembered. And Paul's using dung as, all these great things from my past are absolutely useless compared to knowing Jesus. Just something I tied together. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a good connection.
And then in 8 and 9, speaking of basically forgotten, Zophar continues to say Job will perish for his wickedness and never be remembered, and repeats the thought from verse 7 about those who saw Job won't see him anymore. So Zophar is kind of really driving home the point. He shall fly away as a dream and shall not be found, the wicked guy who's going to die. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. And Zophar is, they listen to each other. Zophar is addressing what Job said when he said, these eyes will see. I know that my Redeemer lives, and in my flesh, and these eyes shall see his vindication, see him. So Job is expressing faith in the Messiah, which he would have known little about, probably. I mean, he would have heard of the account of Jenna in the Garden of Eden, where the seed of the woman would crush the seed of the serpent, and so he would have had some messianic insights that, but he says, I know my vindicator, my Redeemer lives, and with these eyes I will see him. And Zophar says, the eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. So, Job, nobody's going to see you. Nobody's going to see any wicked person like you. Job says, my eyes are going to see the Redeemer. And Zophar says, nobody's even going to see you. What are you talking about? So no wonder God's mad at those guys. No wonder. Which is also something we can take away from all this and probably repeat when we get towards the end of the book. But God's in control and he's not mocked. So when people stand against us, stand in his righteousness and, and just trust him,
I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say, but his friends, they talk about God, they talk about aspects of God, but they don't point Job to God. They talk and talk,
Yeah.
but they don't point to him hope or the Redeemer or just, but instead they distract with their talking so that he won't hope in God.
Yeah.
That he won't,
Yeah.
like he'll just be feeling so guilty that he won't dare go to God.
And that seems what they want. And when they do mention God, it's either God's getting you for your wickedness, or they'll mention God to support their theory.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good point. Yeah,
Oh,
you didn't make that connection, but yeah, I see it now. But
yeah.
Almost like a bunch of guys getting at a bar, just having something to complain about.
Yeah.
Job's friends don't really speak about the Lord that much,
No.
but like they think that they're trying to help Job, which you're not doing at all. But they think they're doing the best to help Job. So probably in their thinking that they're helping Job, they probably, when Job is saying kind of over and over again, basically blaming God for everything that's happening to him, they're probably like, oh no, don't say that. You can't blame God.
Yeah.
You can get in so much trouble for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Oh, God can take it. And
God
God didn't rebuke Job for that. The Lord gave and the Lord took away. And in all this, Job didn't sin with his lips, that kind of thing. So, yeah, no, they're just wrong, and they think they know it all.
But I don't believe that they think that they're doing the right thing. I think that they're thinking just about themselves. And like, it's either what's going on with them is a pride thing about themselves. And so they want to demonstrate that in everybody's presence, especially Job's. Or otherwise it's motivated by something that is not really reaching out to Job.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's not. It's taking from him.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
Like with there's that confusion. It's like there's just nothing considerate or gentle or understanding about what they're doing. They're just talking their heads off because they think that they're smart and because they think they're going to get away with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But God says, no, you're not.
Yeah, no, they're definitely, I'm not sure. I think they probably in their mind consciously would think they're doing the right thing. I don't think that they're, I don't know. But they're definitely not doing the right thing. I'm just not sure if they're.
I think why I think that is because I don't think Satan would have chosen them if they weren't doing that kind of thing.
Well, no, there's definitely pride and arrogance.
He wanted to find people that were really going to do the job for him.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt there's pride and arrogance there. I just don't know if they consciously say, oh, I can't wait to stick it to Job. I mean.
No, I don't think that.
No.
But they, like Satan, he uses religiosity. He uses different expressions that would pass the test for people who don't discern or aren't aware.
I think that they might not be, like they might not fit, like they're not aware that they're making it worse for Job, and they probably even think that they're good thing, because like the Bible says that, for example, Paul was persecuting believers thinking he was doing the Lord's will. And even like the other Pharisees and all that who tried to kill Jesus, they were totally wrong, but they thought that they were doing like the Lord's will. Some of them might have been, like some of the high priests or high officials might have believed, like might have known that they were like working against the Messiah, but probably the majority of them thought that they were just doing the godly thing because this guy was a heretic and he was saying that he's God and all that. And so they thought that they were doing like the godly thing by having Jesus killed. Yeah,
that's what he even says.
I think for sure God was merciful to these guys.
Oh, yeah.
By saying, you can repent, you can get Job to pray over you.
Don't talk to me, go to Job.
So I'll
That's
I'll
funny.
I'll look if you do these things.
Yeah. All right, verse 10. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hands shall restore their goods. So the wicked. Zophar is saying that Job robbed people, and his children would have to atone for Job's treachery. But Job has no children anymore. Another unsubstantiated accusation from Zophar. So basically, his children shall seek to please the poor, generically speaking of the wicked, and his hands shall restore their goods. Well, the implication is, how did the poor get poor? Well, the hands of the wicked will restore their goods. So that means they took it. And the New Testament example I would come up with would be Zacchaeus. You know, of course, now Zacchaeus restored what he robbed from people because he got saved, not because he was wicked and somehow forced into it. But so basically he's baselessly accusing Job of robbing from the poor, and that's why Job's now poor, because you're going to pay for what you did.
The thing is, yes, he's poor now, but he didn't give any of his wealth back to anyone. He didn't give his wealth to any poor person.
And he has no children anymore to do what the first part of it says, to seek to please the poor. So
it's like, come on, man! If you're gonna make arguments, you're gonna have to make some better arguments than that.
Yeah, be realistic at least.
Now, is that what you were talking about? Like they're being robbed, because he's actually accusing Job of being a thief. And actually, they're doing the stealing kind of thing.
Well, they're certainly not. They're attempting to steal, perhaps not any wealth because he has none left, but stealing his honor that he used to have, and his place of wisdom that he apparently had. And so, yeah, in a sense, they're stealing, but not his goods because he has nothing. So
I'm a little confused too about that. It's like Zophar is speaking about Job,
about the wicked in general.
About the wicked, but he's trying to, at least from our point of view, he's trying to speak to Job, but he's making this general awareness of the wicked, but he's hinting at Job.
He's too cowardly to say you did this or you did that.
And but then Zophar is lumping into all of his dialogue about for instance, about Zophar is speaking now about his children, but they've passed away, and that they have to
atone.
Right, the children have to atone. So what are we going to do about that now? And and because Job has to give back in some ways
What he stole.
Yeah, but he, like there's not even any evidence
There's
of that.
no evidence whatsoever.
But like that's what people, or that's what Satan does. He'll grasp at all kinds of things,
Right.
making you dizzy. Like, well, when did that happen? When did that happen? And in the end, Satan will say, "Yeah, you did it. You did it." And it's like, what?
If the devil's lips are moving, lies are flowing, because that's his native tongue.
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. That's it. So, I mean, if anything's not in line with the Bible, it's a lie from the pit of hell. So that's the way I look at that. All right, verse 11, Zophar may be alluding to what Job said in Job 19:20 when he mentions his bones. Zophar is saying, you're full of youthful secret sins. While you were looking righteous, you will die. So Job says in 19:20, my bone cleaveth to my skin and to my flesh, and I am escaped with the skin of my teeth. So, and then here, his bones are full of sin, full of the sin of his youth, which shall lie down with him in the dust. So basically, he may be addressing what Job said about his own bones. Job's making an actual truthful statement that he's nothing but skin and bones. And Zophar is saying your bones are full of sin, and your youthful sin. You're paying the dues for the sins of your youth. Basically, is what he's kind of saying there.
Just looping in whatever accusation he thinks he can.
Yep. All right. The next section is 12 through 19. The wicked man's life is full of frustration. All right. Verse 12, though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue. And verse 13, though he spare it and forsake it not, but keep it still within his mouth. Basically, doing evil tastes good to people like you, Job. And the New Testament comparison, sin is pleasant for a season, which is what I think, Hebrews 11:25, speaking of Moses, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. So, Job, your evil tastes good, but, it doesn't last. For these two passages, 12 and 13, my little note is, why won't you let it go and admit you are a vile and filthy sinner, Job? More or less what he's repeatedly saying.
Just thought of something. That's why we as Christians should be careful to only say about ourselves what God says about us. Because otherwise we can be saying things that Satan wants us to say about ourselves. And God does not want us to do that. We're only to say things that God says. If God says we're a sinner, then we're a sinner. And if God says that we're his child, then we're his child. And so on. But just to take all this and say as if, well, I somehow have to apply that in my life. No, you got to understand the spirit of where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Is he just like slinging mud on the wall to see what sticks?
He's just, almost everything he's saying is false accusation.
Yeah.
He's trying, they're all trying to beat Job into submission. That's what they're doing. Job, just admit you are what we say you are and see what happens. Well, Job's like, no, I'm not going to admit that because I'm not what you say I am. Here he just accused him of being a thief, basically. So, All right, 14. Yet his meat in his bowels is turned. It is the gall of asps within him. Basically, the pleasures of your sin are like cobra venom. That's what's killing you, Job. So if you're guilty of sin, it's a poison. You're killing yourself. And we keep telling you, but you don't listen.
Must have been so tiring for Job.
Yeah, well,
Because they were relentless.
at least this is his last time listening to Zophar. He's got two more, one more from each of the other two, but this is his last time listening to Zophar.
My last words on 16 says, which ill-gotten wealth contains. He sucks the poison of vipers, in parentheses, and says, which ill-gotten wealth contains.
Yeah, so that ties back to what we just said where he accused Job of stealing.
Right,
and
yeah.
stealing from the poor, yeah. And it's living sinfully is poison that's going to kill you. And that's what they're accusing Job of.
Yeah, because 15 and 16, in parentheses, in mine it says ill-gotten both times.
Yeah, so that's the gain or the wealth or whatever. That's that ill-gotten gain that it ties in with the accusation of stealing, and who knows what else they probably accused him of. But in verse 15, the image in verse 15, he hath swallowed down riches. That's the ill-gotten gain aspect. The image of that is, when I looked it up, is that of a predator and his prey, swallowing down that, like the predator grabs hold and swallows down especially like a crocodile or something like that, that's the image that's there. So Zophar says Job's former wealth was ill-gotten gain. God is punishing you for abusing others. Basically is how I summarize those couple of verses.
And imagine, what if he never even did any of those things, and somebody is just speaking so boldly.
And he never
in
did.
his face.
He never did,
Right.
because God bragged about him to Satan. I mean, God wouldn't brag about someone who got his wealth that way. No, he definitely was. So.
This is like gossip.
Yeah,
This falls under gossip.
it's gossip, but generally speaking, gossip is not said in front of the person you're talking about.
Right.
That would be the only difference. It's false accusation is probably better.
Right, yeah.
Gossip would be as if the three guys were talking about Job behind his back,
Right.
which would have been better for Job. But so 16, now we did that one. 17, a wicked man, my paraphrase, my notes, a wicked man like you, Job, will not see any good or any blessing in life. And then I compare that with Job 29, 5 through 6. When the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me, when I washed my steps with butter, and the rocks poured me out rivers of oil. And I think the tie-in there was verse 17, speaking of butter and rivers. So it's kind of a parallel. Zophar saying, a wicked guy like you will not see rivers, the floods, and the brooks of honey and butter. And Job saying, this is what I had before, when the Almighty was still with me. Just a contrast.
Also, it kind of reminded me, it seems like it's kind of similar to the kind of saying of river, like the land flows with milk and honey.
Yeah.
Kind of like
The Oregon Trail.
Yep.
The Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
When they were going out west on the Oregon Trail, when they reached Oregon, that's what they said.
Yeah.
That the state is overflowing with milk and honey.
Yeah.
Like, it
So
seems like
the
that
promised
kind
land.
of-
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like that's sort of like
That's the
saying that
result.
really good land.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
referred to it, the promised land, it was referred to
Yes,
the land of
that's-
milk and honey.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. So then verse 18, essentially Job will, essentially so far saying Job will work for his food and it'll be taken away from him before he can eat it. Your ill-gotten gains will not benefit you, wicked Job, in any way. And basically that's talking about all the stuff that happened to Job already, you know, all of his wealth and everything gone. And then verse 19, Zophar accuses Job of violently abusing and robbing from the poor. Of course, he gives no evidence. Again, Job's friends use his plight as proof of Job's vile lifestyle, and they get very bizarre in their inane accusations. Oh, look at that! I even put notes. No wonder God is angry with them. It was right there in my note, and it came to me again. But basically, he's saying, you know, surely, verse 19, because he, the wicked, has oppressed and has forsaken the poor, because he has violently taken away a house which he didn't build. So he's
Basically, in modern terms, it'd be like you got in a car accident, and then your friends come to like help you and say that you got in a car accident because you stole the car when it's your own car.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Just false accusations.
And especially if these three friends of his, I get the feeling that it could very well have been possible that they would speak of these things like over days or times or something. And I'm sure other people from time to time heard what they were saying, or they discussed it or talked about it with other people. But then if someone says these strong accusations, people start to believe that.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Repeating a lie.
Repeating a lie, that's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that comes up, well, I won't even mention the guy's name because I don't want to give anybody the idea to go look into his book, but basically the old book, and I won't mention the title, but the idea that's embraced by communism and socialism and stuff like that is what you just said. If you repeat a lie often enough, people are going to start believing at least part of it. And with no proof whatsoever. No proof whatsoever. And that's what they're doing. I mean, they're all repeating the same lie. Job, you're guilty. Repent, listen to us, and do what we say. I mean, it's the same lie.
And then the retraction is on the back page in the corner saying, oh, we made a mistake.
Yeah, if you even get a retraction. Those guys didn't get a retraction. They got a slap upside the head by God and said, don't talk to me, go talk to Job. That's pretty powerful, so. Anyhow, 20 through 29. Job, listen to what will be the end result of your wickedness. So, verse 20, Job, you'll not have any inner peace. He will lose everything that delights you. You will lose everything that delights you. So that's part of the end result. Surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly, no peace, and he shall not save of that which he desired. So the delightful things you're not going to keep, and you're not going to have any peace. Verse 21, there shall none of his meat be left, therefore shall no man look for his goods. You're going to have nothing, Job, so no one's going to want anything from you because you got nothing to want. This is him prophesying the end result of Job's maladies and his unrepentant wickedness.
I didn't notice what he said in their prophecies.
What?
Boy, were they wrong.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep, for sure. 22. Zophar explains Job's anguish is because Job relied on his own self-sufficiency rather than God. You are so wicked, Job, that all of the wicked people you oppressed will come against you, is basically just one false accusation after another with zero. I haven't seen any evidence presented from any of these three guys to back up their claim. Their only proof is Job's suffering, so you got to be this, that, and the other thing. Really?
And that kind of stuff still happens to this day.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That people are accused of things and
Yeah, yeah.
there's no truth behind it at all.
None
And
whatsoever.
It's dragged out. And yes, it's
That's what
just,
it is.
that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Kill, steal, and destroy.
Yeah.
Yes.
In verse 22, in the fullness of his sufficiency, this is where I came up with that self-sufficiency thing. In the fullness of his sufficiency shall he be in need. Every hand of the wicked shall come against him. So basically, all those folks you oppress, Job, don't expect no help. They're coming against you. And, that's just ongoing false accusation, one right after the other. All right, verse 23. I got a few notes on that. God's wrath is upon you always, even when you try to eat and fill your belly. Perhaps this is a reference to the fiery rain, which is similar to Sodom and Gomorrah. See these passages. So 23, when he's about to fill his belly, God shall cast fury of his wrath upon him and shall rain it upon him while he's eating. So it could be like some parallels, like the Sodom, the fire and brimstone, God's wrath, so he's equating God's wrath against Job with similarity to God's wrath against Sodom. That's how bad things are. So Psalm 11:6 says, upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire and brimstone, and a horrible tempest. This shall be their portion of their cup. And then Job 1:16, while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the fire of God is fallen from heaven, has burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell you. So he's basically equating Job with, vile wickedness that earns the fiery wrath of God.
Obviously, there's nothing that specifically says this, but I almost wonder if, Satan or one of his demons showed up to each one of the servants and said, go tell Job what I've done. Go tell Job what's happened.
Excuse me, probably. But for sure they're going to go and tell him because Job's the guy who's given their paycheck. So, plus they don't want to get blamed, It's like, this is what happened, If all what happened, Job could say, well, where are my sheep? You were supposed to be watching them. Where are they? Well, you got to explain yourself and whatever. Satan's behind the whole thing, that's for sure. Verse 24, he shall flee from the iron weapon, and the bow of steel or bow of steel shall strike through him. And let's read verse 25. It is drawn and comes out of the body. Yes, the glittering sword comes out of his gall. Terrors are upon him. So verse 24, the wicked cannot escape God's judgment. If he avoids one weapon, he will fall to another.
One thing that I want to say, this is more history than about the actual thing, but my translation says, he may flee from the iron weapon, but the bronze bow will pierce him.
Mm-hmm.
I get the feeling that bronze is probably probably more like proper translation because
Probably.
steel is like a modern invention.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that at this time they had like iron weapons.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
seems almost like people lost the understanding of iron weapons because there was because if this was before like Moses, like and all that, like Moses was way before like the Iron Age.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I didn't look into what exactly the Hebrew was on that.
either it could just be sort of like the same, like since Hebrew has less words, it could be like a talking about like a shiny metal.
Yeah.
Like the word for iron could be the same word for like another material.
Yeah, and
that's like iron.
the next verse speaks of the glittering sword, so it could be something along that line. So basically, verses 24 and 25, you might escape one weapon, but another one's going to get you. And in verse 25, the arrow is pulled. The arrow is pulled out of his body and does all of its intended damage, possibly referring to yet another devastating weapon, a sword being drawn and used. Zophar alludes to Job 6, verse 4, for the arrows of the Almighty, where Job says the arrows of the Almighty are within me. And so he could be making that connection, only Job gives God the credit, Zophar blames Job. God's in control in Job's mind. In Zophar's mind, Job, you brought it on yourself.
It's almost like the devil talking about it.
Oh yeah. Satan's
It's your
definitely.
fault. Yeah, you're the thief. And
Satan's
you're the one
definitely
that's
behind
going
him.
Because you're a thief and everything.
Yeah, Satan lives.
Taking the attention off the devil himself. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you're the thief.
Yeah, you're the one. You're the one. And Satan, that's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
I mean, especially when Christians first get saved, the devil's always whispering, "You call yourself a Christian? Look what you just did. Look what you just said. How can you dare call yourself a Christian?" Well, it reminds me of the old chorus, which I won't sing. I hear the accuser roar, the ills that I have done, I know them well and 1,000 more. But Jehovah findeth none, he findeth none, he findeth none. I've been washed in the blood of his Son. So when the devil lies to you and tells you you ain't what you say you are, remind him of what Jesus did.
And the accusations through this whole book are the same tactics he uses today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Relentless.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, in order to wrap up the chapter, let's just do the last few verses. I'll read my notes, and if need be, we'll stop and discuss it all. Verse 26, all darkness, every calamity that the wicked deserve are stored up and saved for them in God's secret places. You won't get away with anything, Job. This is my paraphrase, my notes. The consuming fire is not kindled by man's hands, but by God's. Compare that with Matthew 3:12, where it says, whose fan is in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor and gather his wheat into the garner, but he will burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. So we got a similarity there. You're not going to get away with anything, Job. God burns up the chaff. So, Job, your vile, sinful chaff, you're not going to get away with it. God starts the fire, and God's going to take care of it. Well, again, he's falsely accusing Job. Verse 27, all creation is at war with a wicked man, and God will expose his sin. The heavens shall reveal his iniquity, and earth shall rise up against him. Verse 28, in God's wrath, these are my notes, in God's wrath the wicked wicked's prosperity is eradicated. This clearly ties Job to the stubborn, wicked man as Zophar is describing him, since all of Job's possessions have been lost. So it's just pretty direct connection that this wicked man that Zophar is speaking of is Job. In case you didn't get it, this is you, you know. And then the last verse, this is Zophar's final conclusion. He does not speak again in the book of Job. Whew, that's a relief. We got two more of his friends to get through, but this is the last time we hear from this bozo. I mean, Zophar. Did I say that out loud?
One down, two to go.
One down, two to go. So essentially, in verse 29, essentially he's saying, Job, this is how God deals with the wicked. This is what happened to you. You are wicked. Eliphaz and Bildad each have one more speech 3 times, but Zophar only had 2 turns. Why? Maybe God could not put up with him any longer. That was my first thought, and I got LOL after that. Maybe he was the youngest of the 3, possibly. Maybe he was more fed up than the other 2 and just wasn't going to have any more of it. Maybe Job didn't give him another chance to speak after Bildad's 3rd short comments. Perhaps Job had had enough of them.
And knocked them out.
Well, maybe. I don't think he had any strength for that, but
Or maybe Elihu, who knew this guy had said nothing, he was finally like, it's my turn to speak now.
it could be. Well, Bildad's last comment, I forget which chapter it is, it's like 5 or 6 verses. So he does get a third time to speak, but not much.
Tired of trying to convince Job.
Yeah, so all right, thanks for joining us. Lord willing, we'll see you next week.